G'day, welcome. Just a short video here on some of the progress I'm making. These are just some of the O-rings that came in the kit. There's your valve stem seals there. Just trying to ascertain what all of these do. They go on the valve adjusting caps, and these larger sort of thin ones I've got there are for the bottom of the barrels underneath, and of course these ones are for the inlet manifolds. And those little guys there, they're sort of, I think they're between the cylinder head and the barrels. The rest of them I'm not sure, but I need to sort of look into that. So content wise, I haven't got a whole lot in this video. Got to talk about cleaning up, a bit of hydroblasting. Of course, this guy here, the sump, I'll get hydroblasted, and there's got to take that bottom bit out. The screw's a bit damaged, and of course the bottom of the case doesn't look too good. As far as these sorts of covers, I'm not going to bother hydroblasting that. I'm just going to clean it in the parts wash and basically just buff the outside. That's all we need to do with that. Same sort of thing we did with the 750, and that's going to come out fine. This guy here, a wolf filter housing, has been rattle can. That I will get hydroblasted. That's longer than the 751. It's quite deep, and it's got a spacer in there. And I've also got a proper spring and a washer for it. Clutch cover housing, just the same as the other one. We can just clean that up and buff the outside of it. I thought I'd lost this stator housing cover, alternator cover, and of course it turned up in there. I thought I'd taken it out last year, and I hadn't. Again, that sort of stuff's all visible on the bike, or it's one of the focal points on the engine. And again, I might have to take the windings out of it and buff that, make it look a little bit better than it does now. And of course that's got a cover that sits over it that I may need to touch up as well. Thankfully it doesn't look like this bike's being dropped, so it should look pretty good. Right, so I've got the oil pump here. Now this bike has been in a bit of a mess. The cylinder head base gasket, no sorry, the cylinder base gasket was around the wrong way. There was goo, like elastic, all over the head, and the valve timing was 90 degrees out, which meant we've bent a valve. This thing's covered in blue Celastic everywhere, and you can see there on the washers, they look absolutely terrible, and it's starting to come away. Celastic's just not something we want to put on an engine, not where there's oil galleries and that sort of stuff anyway. It's mainly, you know, good for exhaust and this sort of business. But we'll pull this apart, get all this Celastic out. There's loads of it sort of squashed in there, and we'll see how we go. I think it's going to be such that we're just going to have to pull it apart and replace any of the consumables in there. So starting out, we can see there's Celastic there in the inside of the port, and again, you know, we've got goop and all sorts of stuff around there, which is no good, and those O-rings are compressed to the point where they're not usable. There's a big chunk in there, look at that. Don't know why people do this. I just don't trust anything that's been done on this bike, and it's a bit like the XC in that everything we've pulled off it, not everything, but a lot of things we've pulled off it are very, very, very questionable, so I have no trust, little to no trust in it. And again, as we pull this main housing gasket off, you know, it speaks for itself. And that is actually a really rigid type of O-ring. There's nothing really malleable about it now. It's not at the point where it's going to snap, but it's not good. So there's a guy on eBay selling a set for something like 20 bucks, and hopefully they're the right ones, although the ones he's selling look a little bit thicker in terms of the wall thickness. Right, so just taking the oil pressure switch off here. It's a switch, not a sender, because it just controls the light on the instrument cluster. And getting ready to take the bottom part of the pump housing off. Now, I did this the wrong way in that I should have taken the top part off first. I'm just pointing out that that's a JIS driver, and I've loosened it off with that driver, and of course I'm just taking it out with a Phillips. You're not supposed to use Phillips head screwdrivers in those fasteners, but given that they were loose, or loose-ish, I just backed them out with that. It was going to be easier because I haven't got a proper JIS actual hand screwdriver, if you know what I mean. These are a double pump, just like the 750, in that the 750 has two pumps in the same housing, similar to this, but they're both the same size. So one's a supply pump on that bike, and the other's a scavenge pump because it's dry sump arrangement. This one has the main body of the pump there for supplying the engine, the bearings and cylinder head and overhead gear and all that sort of stuff, whereas the small pump on the reverse side of it is just for the gear clusters as well. So separating it here, there's a pressure relief with my thumb is, and we just back it out, and you can see there's the rotor, a very hard O-ring on the inside. No one's been in here, they've just gooped up the outside of it. There's a dot on both parts of that impeller assembly, so we have to make sure we get it around the right way. And yeah, I screwed up taking this apart, and that pressure relief will just withdraw, so we can remove that spring and the plunger as well. And that's a little pin tool in there, a little pin that drives the inner part of the pump. Of course, here is the pressure relief valve coming out. It comes out very easily, and it's just one of those things. You've got to make sure we get it in. I'm using a magnet there to pull it out. Anytime you're pulling bits and pieces out of this, they're well lubricated and the tolerances are very tight, so you don't want to be using screwdrivers or awls or anything like that. You need to use a magnet to withdraw these parts. So we're just taking the front part of the case off now, and that's got the small pump, and that's just for the gear clusters, just for lubrication of those things. And of course I think this was a little bit stuck. I can't remember. We'll just get a small screwdriver and lever that off and see how we go. But at the end of the day, it's quite a complicated little thing, a lot of intricate machining in it. You can see there, that's got an O-ring around it too, the two halves of the pump. Very intricate indeed, and we need to make sure we get all that in good condition, or at least in the right order when we reassemble it. I couldn't see any marks on it determining which was top and bottom, but then I didn't look that hard either. By the time I got it apart, it had fallen to bits, and I just hope I can get it back in the right order. But you can see there, it's a very, very small piece of kit. So I had a quick look at the cylinder head. That was also got to be hydroblasted as well, but I haven't got a valve spring compressor small enough to get it out, to get the valves out. We're just going to touch up those badges. I did the black a little while ago, and it's not that great really, but look, at the end of the day it was an effort, and a bit of a valiant effort, but not terrific. Badges are very, very difficult to get looking right now. I've just put a bit of white on here, and it's too stark. This is just, if you look on the left hand side under that other Honda badge, that's just a little pot of Humbrol model paint, if you like, from the local toy shop. Something about $1 each or $2 each or something like that. I think the red one was dearer though. I did add a tiny bit of red to warm up the colour a little bit. It looks like, it doesn't look like it on the screen, but when you look at the colour of those badges, it looks a lot like polar white, the Ford colour. And I just put a dot. This was a stupid idea, putting another dot in there. And the black is supposed to sort of pull the colour down, and the red's supposed to warm it up a bit. But of course, once I stuck that red paint in and mixed it up, I wound up with freaking pink. And we can't use that. That looks absolutely awful. We can't do that at all. What's interesting about this though is I have left the paint very thick. It was thick in the pot. It almost needed thinning, but I left it there just so it gives a good finish on the badge, because more often than not when you do this sort of thing, the paint's very scant and you can see through it. It just doesn't quite look right. So that was an absolute train wreck. So here we go, we're just trying to fix up. It's like making a bad coffee and trying to add more sugar or whatever. It's just never going to work. You tip it out and start again. There we go, with more paint and more white. We mix it in and we've still got pink. So we're going to have to do something about this, take affirmative action. So rather than flogging a dead horse, we're going to start again with a different lid. We've wasted lots of paint, but it doesn't matter. It was only fairly cheap anyway. And I'm just going to pull a little bit of black, just a brush load off that other colour, and add it in to try and grade off that way, and a dot of the other colour, but it's still, or the other pinky bit, it still wasn't quite right though, but I think it'll be passable. I have an idea. Look, it's not great, but at the end of the day, once it's on the badges and the badges are on the bike itself, I don't think you're ever going to see it. So I've just done a little sample there, adding a little bit more, just messing around with it. I'm used to mixing a lot of paint, so I got my quantities completely wrong, which is why it kind of train wrecked. At any rate, we did another colour sample, still not very happy with it. So look, I'm thinking about giving up at this stage. Painted badges are never that good, but more white, and we'll just see how this goes. Try and pick up a little bit more black. What I'm trying to do is get away from that red. I bought a thing of red thinking I'd use more than that. Just one tiny pinhead literally would have been enough, and even that might have been a bit overpowering. So look, bit more black, bit more white. We'll just try it there and see how it goes. And bugger it, let's just go for broke. I'm not being particularly careful here. I did the black originally and I was never happy with it, so I've got to go over that again. The badge itself has a very defined edge to it, so you can kind of go through this fairly quickly, and I'm just using a small brush there and just filling the void again. The paint's thick, so look, it seems to be flowing in quite well. If we go over into the black area, no harm done. We can just touch that up, and of course even on the edge of the lettering where it's silver or aluminium colour, we can just rub that back with a bit of wet and dry. So I just go through the whole things, do them up as best I can. Some of these badges looked a bit dirty before I began, and I tried to clean them with Prepsol, and none of that came out. It was just muck in the paint that was done many years ago. So I got a bit of t-shirt wrapped around my finger quite tightly, and I'm just sort of wiping off the excess, just so that when I come to wet sand the edges of the letters, if you know what I mean, there's not too much paint to contend with. So very quick, very rough, but I don't think it matters at this stage. It's going to look fine. So I'll just pick up a razor blade, any of the obvious stuff in terms of bits that I'd left before from the finger on the rag, if you know what I mean. I couldn't reach into the center of the letters, so that's why I'm using a blade in those sorts of spots. The paint is air dry enamel, so it took a little while. I did this yesterday, and I'm just taking up some of the rough, and then we'll pick up the rest with wet and dry. Got an issue. There's a CB350 engine, apparently in good running condition. It looks terrible. It's all covered in muck and grease and all that sort of stuff. It's in Adelaide in a place, I think it's called Wallaroo, and I want to get it. I'm actually really keen to get it, but I've got to look into couriers and all that sort of stuff to see if I can get it down to Melbourne. Failing that, if anyone lives close to Wallaroo, send me a message. I'd love to talk to you, and if I can, if I can keep it with you until I make a road trip up there, that'd be fantastic. But I really would like to get it because they're just so rare. Good source of parts, but more than that, if I can find a junk frame, then maybe I can get a bit creative and make a cafe racer. But I don't know. I don't want to do it the way it was done before. Parts of that look really cool. I want to do it my way, so I'm not going to follow any real method that people use for making cafe races. So I've been watching a couple of CX500 builds, and I've never really been interested in those, but geez, some of them look absolutely brilliant. I'm getting itchy feet to be a bit more creative instead of just doing a factory build, which is what I always seem to do. What was I going to say? Yeah, just touching up the black here. And they're looking alright, I'm fairly pleased with that. It certainly looks better than it did before. Ordered a whole lot of parts for this 350. I've ordered set of front brake pads, because even though the old ones had lots of pad on them, you can't use them. They get brittle and start shaling. Cam chain, both guides and the tensioner arm. Ordered an oil filter bolt, primary chain, a seat lock, clutch cover screw set, transmission cover screw set, generator cover screw set, and then I've figured out I've already got them. I thought they were Allen key ones, but it doesn't matter. Black big end bearings. Very hard to get in black. They're sort of the OE replacement if your crank's in very good condition. People tend to just put black ones in anyway. Can't get black for the main, so we're settling with brown, which might be a bit more clearance. I need to sort of look into that. Ordered all the fuel tap strainer and O-rings and clutch lever, because I've got a brake one, an OE brake one, but not the clutch one. So all this stuff's coming from Dave Silver Spares in England. The postage from Britain is a lot cheaper than the postage through United States, through USPS. So I've gone that way just because I thought it was going to be a more reasonable approach. So look, even though I've ordered it, it might be another 3 weeks or so before this stuff hits this place here. So it might be a while. And then of course I've got to order the brown bearings, and they're going to do that locally. So look, that's about all I've got for you. Sorry, scant on content, but I wanted to let you know how it's all going. But thank you very much for watching. As always, enjoy Classic, and I'll see you soon. Ta-da!